Hello everyone, this is a good captain. Welcome to another video in my tutorial series on the Midway Guadalcanal game system produced by Avalon Hill in the early 90s. This is the Battle of Coral Sea, Part 7. Before we get into the next turn here, the morning turn, I have to amend a small error on my part. This scout KK out here, the Japanese scout, it moved 12 spaces. I was reviewing the video and I was shocked to see that I made such a silly mistake. So it should have ended in J9, and this is really wouldn't have affected the search patterns, frankly, at all. So I will leave everything else as is. Uh, but it does highlight the need to completely comprehend, at the very least, the searching rules, because no one can police you when you're searching with these scouts. So you don't want to cheat your your opponent. Uh, So wherever you can, or just pay very special attention when you're scouting wherever you can, and if there's any errors, just try to fix them in the best, most agreeable manner possible. As it is, I'm playing solitaire, so that was an easy fix for me. It really doesn't change anything at all, frankly. So, uh, oh, the other thing was that I forgot to launch a scout as the Japanese player. I forgot that there was a scout on lay base. That's okay though. I think there's really not any benefit to having a fifth scout up here, and it's probably a benefit to have one staggered that can patrol like these all can patrol, but on this turn they'll all have to return to base, except for the one we didn't launch from lay. Okay, so let's get to rolling for side A, side B. Now, the allied player was side A last turn, so they'll roll first. They roll a 5, and the Japanese player rolls a 3. So the allied player will retain side A. We'll go into the ready step first for the allies. And we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to launch Combat Air Patrol off of Yorktown. We're going to launch 2. Okay. And also we're going to launch... oh, that's right. We want to launch the dive bombing squadron off of Yorktown into a normal strike. Basically, we're going to transfer it over to Lexington, and I'm basically going to show you how that works when we do this. Okay, so on the Japanese side, the assembly step is going to be getting this scout up off a lay. We're also going to use the Shoho's fighters to cover cover our task force here. So, and yes, as the Japanese player, we know that we're out of range, but this is just to maintain appearances. Always keep the enemy as much on their toes as you can as to your whereabouts. So this is basically demonstrating to the allied player that I might be within scouting range, and I'm taking a precaution against your scouts being able to find me, knowing full well that the allied scouts have a range of 6 and cannot patrol. It's still just a good habit as the Japanese player, as any player, to do these good habits when you can. So yeah, we'll cover our fleet there. Okay, so there's nothing to do in the ready step, so we'll go straight to the sea movement step as the allies, since we're side of here. And I think it's important to very quickly touch on some strategy here. So I actually made this marker just now before starting the video. This is our last known contact of the major carrier group, the two big carriers, Shokaku and Zuikaku. So we are most worried about this fleet, and we know it's joined up with the support force to make a bigger fleet. So that either occurred west of Rabaul or in Rabaul itself. Um, at any rate, uh, the reason I dated this and put the turn, that's our last known position, is that there's no way that that fleet could have moved more than 6 spaces from where where it was last seen. So it could move a 2 on turn 5, 1 during the first night turn, 2 in the second night turn, and 1 this morning. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It could be here in F4, E5, because the Shoho group, which was in Rabal, could have come down and joined it very easily. It could be in D5. It could be in C6. 6. So we have to assume that that they could be here. Use a very aggressive Japanese player could be there. And Japanese carrier planes, the max range are the dive bomber and fighter units, which with a range of 6. So theoretically, they are just outside of range. There's no way we can be hit by Japanese land or carrier-based air this turn if we remain this distance away. And moving closer is a bit of a risk. So I am going to stay at the periphery. I have a longer range strategy as the Allies that I'm not going to discuss at the moment, just because I don't want to take too much time. But I'm going to go ahead and move Task Force 11 first, since, oh, that's the last bit I forgot to state, that the Japanese player should have declared a shadow using Scout NN. So, as the Allied player, knowing that Task Force 11 is being shadowed, I'll move this fleet first and drag it off to H10. So it'll go like this on the Japanese side, which will expend 1 movement point for that scout. And that's right, I don't have labels on the scouts at the moment, but I would have labeled it with movement points remaining. It has 10. And again, just to recap the shadowing rules, this patrol aircraft cannot leave. Since you declare shadow of a target, of a contact, you are restricted to simply shadowing that task force. You can't go flying and patrolling around anymore. However, you can use any theoretical movement points not expended to convert to a search modifier. So we have 10 movement points remaining theoretically that we can convert to a positive 20 modifier when rolling to get better information about this contact. So anyway, back to the board. Task Force 11 moves to H10. Task Force 16 moves to G11. And you'll see why in a moment. Just basically to confuse the scouts and increase the risk of shooting, or increase the chance of shooting some of these scouts down. Okay, so the Allied movement phase is complete. We go to the Japanese. We're going to simply move our strike force a little bit closer. Okay, that's complete. So we'll do the Allied air operations first. And we're going to go ahead and move the fighter units. This fighter unit's going to move over to the Task Force 16. That's why we launched 2. And this unit will go to the map, but we're not going to do anything with it. The unit from Yorktown that should be on Saratoga, we'll drop it into Task Force 11 hex, but he's not going to move. He's just going to stay right there. You could patrol with him. We could go searching for enemy, right? But you have to attack whatever you find. Frankly, there is we could, if we wanted to go scouting, we would do scout creation, which I will get into in a moment. These dive bomber units can break off smaller units, scout units, specifically designated to do scout missions, but that's not what we're doing here, and we'll get into that later. So yes, this dive bomber just stays on the board for now, and we go to the Japanese player turn, and this is a little bit more active. So the first thing that we want to do, and first off, let's understand that when we watched the Allied player move one of these fighter groups over to Task Force 16, you can immediately infer that wherever the carriers are, well, whether this is the carriers or not, that patrol plane is going to be engaged by a combat air patrol. And both task forces are within 4 hexes of each other, because to do that sort of split that we just did with the American air movement step, you have to be within normal range in the high cap box to split the caps to cover different fleets like that. So as the Japanese player, we want to search this, not only the hex we have found this contact in, but everything within 4 hexes of it to find that secondary contact, or that inferred contact, I'm sorry. So let's see if we can find both fleets. Scout NN declares that it will patrol the hex that it's currently in, but before they do, the American or Allied player will roll a single D10, and they rolled a 3. So the Japanese now roll, and they can only lose the scout if the Japanese player rolls a 1. So there's a 10% chance here, and no, it's fine. Okay, so now the Japanese shadow scout will conduct a full 10-point patrol. Yeah, you got to be careful when you're shadowing. You can actually be moved out of range, so you need to make sure you're within the air return range. Yeah, we are. So we're going to spend all 10 to gain better knowledge on this contact. So we have 10 remaining. That's a positive 20, and then it's daytime, so it's positive 3 for a net positive 23. Roll a d10, roll a 2, it's a 25. American or the Allied player rolls back a 9, so that's 2 times as much, but not 3 times as much. We will give them, the Japanese player, an exact count of our ships, and immediately the Japanese player can infer that this is now definitely the Task Force 11 fleet and not Task Force 16. So the Japanese will have no need to gain more knowledge from this contact. We can now search the surrounding area to locate that second fleet. And again, it's going to be within 4 hexes of this. And since we knew where it was on turn 5, it can only be 4 hexes from this point of last contact as well. So where they intersect is just in this strip of ocean here. So let's search around the task force and then work out. We'll start with Scout LL. Just for giggles, we'll move in a counter 12 o'clock in clockwise direction. So H9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then bingo, we find him in G11. We have 6 movement points remaining. Yeah, and we're within range of Lay and Rabal, I believe. So we'll go ahead. And we have 6 points remaining, so we'll convert the whole thing to a positive 12 plus 3 for daylight, positive 15. We roll a d10, roll a 2, so it's a 17. Ooh, I'm sorry. You know what we forgot to do? Combat air patrol. So let's finish out the search. Just see if the modifiers make a difference or not. So it's 17, and then the allies roll a 6. So just shy of 3 times as much. But this will be interesting if it's shot down, that modifier is adversely affected. So let's do the combat air patrol. Sorry, retroactively rolling for the combat air patrol over Task Force 16 to shoot down this scout. The Allied player rolls a 10, and the Japanese player rolls a 7. So yeah, they now have, the Japanese player has acquired exact, although not perfect, information on both fleets. All we needed was exact. And that's it. So we'll do that. And there's no need for these 2 scouts to be here, so we're not going to move them. And the scout out of Lay base, this is, how far out are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we're not going to be able to get out there, but we're going to send them out anyway, so we can have 1 scout patrolling around out there next turn. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll be in the area next turn to try to track down these contacts, since nobody can patrol anymore. Okay, so the Japanese air movement and search step is complete. We now go to the air return phase. for the Allies, we're just going to drop in the Saratoga dive bomber unit back onto the, I'm sorry, the Lexington dive bomber unit back onto the Lexington, and then return our fighters to Yorktown. Okay. All right. Oh, and then the Japanese air return phase. We've got to pull down all of the scouts. And I think I'm going to send these two to Leh, and these two we'll send 3 to Leh and 1 back to Rabaul. Put them in the arming box, like so. And that's it. Cool. So that's it, except for the fact that we need to roll for submarines because the Japanese have exact information this turn. There is a potential to activate a submarine attack. So we'll go ahead and roll a d10 for the Japanese. A 6. So on a 1 or a 2, the Americans will be attacked by sub. Nope. All right. So that's going to be it for the morning hours of May 5th. We'll now move the turn record tracks on both search boards. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to do another turn here, even though I guess I could, but it would be a bit of a longer video. But how I'm thinking is the Japanese player is, okay, we've got, it looks like the Allied fleets are forming up, or about to form up. But anyway, they're localized to the center of the Coral Sea down here. Our intention is to get our landing crafts going as soon as these threats are neutralized. The strike force is not going to go directly in. After studying the battlefield, I think just to utilize our scouting advantage and our air arm advantage, it appears the Allied player is wary about moving inside the Rabaul-based air umbrella. So I'm going to probably start moving the strike force to the northeast of this position and just maintain contact with land-based air. We'll just kind of skirt along that edge. We may not get the decisive strike out today. It may be May 6th when we do that, but it's coming soon. Because if we wait too long, it takes a full 13 turns to move the transport fleet from Rabaul to Port Moresby and invade and collect the points for doing that. I need 13 turns at the bare minimum. And that means I basically have 1 full day from now to start moving. So it's actually not a ton of time if we're considering to land those, get those troops landed. They can only plod along at 1 space per turn. The Allies, this is a bit of a tricky, this is a tricky, it's a bit tricky to be the Allies in this scenario in general, in my opinion, but especially with what we've got going on here. I don't think what has happened so far is not crazy. If anybody else plays out this scenario, it seems to be that the Allies can make short work of Tulagi and maybe Shortland. And if they're lucky, maybe they'll get Leh as well before Moresby goes down. But then it's just Rabaul and 2.5 carriers versus 2 carriers. And that's a tough place to be in. There's a few different things we can do. But really, frankly, we are tethered to the Port Moresby, China Strait swath of hexes here. We really don't want to venture too far from this area, as our ability to continue the battle hinges on those transports not getting to the destination. In other words, we know we want the Japanese to attack us, so that's what we're trying to do here. Get the main fleet to close on us so that we can try to fight 1-to-1 as best we can. But we also have limitations that are pretty severe, namely that our fighters have a range of only 4, and even worse, our torpedo bombers have only a range of 3. So this means we're going to have to get real close. And given how well the Japanese search patterns have been in locating us and keeping us tracked, it's going to be difficult. But to be continued. Hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and bye bye.